Well, hey everyone, my name is Johnny Johnston and I am the campus pastor at our Jennersville campus. So glad to have you tuning in with us. It is the weekend before Easter weekend, which means today could be Palm Sunday, the day that you're listening to this, which also means that we are going to be wrapping up our current series in preparation for our Easter celebration services next week at 8, 9:30, and 11 if you're able to join us in person. We'd love to have you be with us at one of our campuses. But as I said, we are wrapping up our series called The Wisdom of Romantic Love. We have spent 6 weeks, now 7, this is the 7th week, in the Old Testament wisdom literature book of Song of Songs. It is the Song of Songs, the ultimate song, right? It's this Hebrew idiom, means it is the song of all songs. It is a love poem, but it's actually a song which is meant to be sung, but we've been talking through it and reading through it. Don't worry, no singing today. And we have followed a man and a woman, he and she together, through a lot of different things. But before we get through what they've been to and where we're going to talk about where they're going today, just a few reminders of some important things about this song. There's been much debate over the years and years and years as to whether or not this is a book of allegory, just symbolizing and representing God's love with his people, God's relationship with his people. For instance, there are some commentators like Matthew Henry, who died in 1714, a long time ago, but he said that whenever we read this book, we must forget that we have a body, which I think is kind of funny because the guy had 9 kids. So he clearly did not forget that he had a body, but he was in the camp that was about that was all about this being an allegory of God's love for his people, between God and his bride. That's one of the number one allegorical images, number one pictures we have to describe God's relationship with his people. God is the groom, his people are the bride. Even in the New Testament, Jesus is the bridegroom and we, the church, are the bride. And the other side of that is that it's actually not allegorical at all, that it is only an erotic Hebrew love poem between two people and their love that they have for each other. Now, we have taken the stance that it's somewhere in between, that there's definitely something very real going on here between a man and a woman, but at the same time, there's a beautiful allegorical picture and multiple pictures that can be painted about God's love for his people. And us, his people, who experience that love. So we've been kind of approaching it from both angles, from both sides. So we have this couple, right? We've been following them, and we followed them through some important things. At the very beginning, we learned that they were very much in love, and they wanted to express that love physically with each other. They wanted to have sex with each other, except they were not yet married. And so at the beginning of the journey, we followed them through this passion, these beautiful expressions of love, these verbal expressions that they had for each other, these admirations that they made for each other, but yet they were choosing to wait to have sex until they were married. So we followed them all through that, oh, I want to be with you, but we can't, not yet. It's good, but not yet. We can't do it. To her wondering, doubting, oh, am I going to lose him if I don't give him what he wants right now? And she was affirmed and confirmed that no, he's not going to leave. And eventually we get to their wedding night where they're able to be together physically. We followed them then into a conflict and how they deal with conflict. And then we realized last week that they were able to come back together, even though she was wondering, are they going to be able to be together? Did the fight ruin their relationship? No, they came back together and they had a reunion and they had makeup sex. They came back together in a beautiful way, which is good because it's in the context of their marriage, right? This book has shown us over and over again, it's not crude, it's not crass, because what's happening here is in the context of a loving relationship, and they took the right steps, protected their hearts, did the things they needed to do properly, and it shows us what passion looks like inside of a marriage. Now today, as we end, we have to ask this question, we have to get to this topic, how to last a lifetime. Is this young couple, are they going to be able to last a lifetime? Will they be able to go the distance? Will they be able to fulfill their vows of till death do us part, right? And all these different things that we could say when we think about relationships. But then I think it also begs us to ask the question, do we have what it takes to last a lifetime? Do we have what it takes to go the distance, to keep our vows that we've made to our spouse? How does one do that? How do you last a lifetime when it comes to romantic love? Now, if you asked people in our world, in society, they probably would tell you that one of the most important things as to whether or not you're going to last a lifetime and whether or not you're going to be able to go the distance is if you find the right person, right? We've all heard this language before. Have you found the one? Is she the one? Is he the one? And it almost makes me think of Jerry Maguire, right? Wherever he says, "You complete me," to Renee Zellweger. I can't remember what the character's name was, but I just know that she was in that movie when he said, "You complete me." There's this idea out there that there's someone who completes us, that they are the one, this perfect person for us. And how do you know when you find the one, right? You can Google it. How do you know when you find the one? There are lists out there. I saw one that was eight things to tell you that you found the one, 10 things to tell you that, 35, no joke, 35 things to let you know that he is the one. Isn't that crazy to think about that? And a lot of them have to do with, well, they'll never make you change, or they always make you happy, or that your family loves them. Where did we get this idea that there's just this one perfect person out there for each of us? It didn't come from the Bible. Do you know where it came from? I read this a while ago when I went back and found it because I think it's incredibly interesting. This idea actually came from an ancient writing called the Symposium by the philosopher Plato. Now, listen to this story. In Plato's eyes, he told this story about how human beings actually used to be connected, like back to back. They had one head with two faces, 4 arms, 4 legs. They were male and female. They were androgynous, right? So they had all the female parts, all the male parts, and they walked forwards and backwards, and they could kind of roll around and crawl and do all these weird things. And what he said happened was that the gods looked at these creatures and they realized at the potential and power that these creatures could have had. And so they did something about it. So Zeus, right, the head god back then, decided that he would cut each of these creatures in half, right? Cut them in half, which it kind of cut their power in half, but it also created more and more people to worship them, more and more beings to worship them, right? He's a man of opportunity. He knew what he was doing. And so Plato said, because of this image, because of this idea, he said, we now go around searching for the other half of us, someone to complete us, someone who is the one. This is where this idea comes from. Isn't that crazy? Did you ever know that before? It's nuts to me that this is where this idea comes from for the one. It's not biblical, but what ends up happening then is if we think about romantic relationships in this way, whenever it gets hard, right? When we say, I didn't think love was going to be this hard. I didn't think relationships would be this hard. Or we say, it just seems like he's not the one. It just seems like she's not the one. Or else we say, it just doesn't seem like we're actually compatible anymore. Can I let you in on a little secret? On like the biblical view of just people in general? No 2 people are compatible. No 2 people are compatible. There was a guy, an ethics professor at Notre Dame named Stanley Hauerwas, and he has this quote to kind of drill this point home, and I think it makes perfect sense. It's a little long, but bear with me. I want you to hear what Hauerwas says about this idea. He says, destructive to marriage is the self-fulfillment ethic that assumes marriage and the family are primarily institutions of personal fulfillment necessary for us to become whole and happy. The assumption is that there is someone just right for us to marry, and that if we look closely enough, we will find the right person. This moral assumption overlooks a crucial aspect to marriage. It fails to appreciate the fact that we always marry the wrong person. We never know whom we marry, we just think we do. Or even if we first marry the right person, just give it a while and he or she will change. For marriage, being the enormous thing that it is, means we are not the same person after we have entered it. The primary problem is learning how to love and care for the stranger to whom you find yourself married. Reading this means that we are not incomplete, right? That even if you're single, right, that you are not this incomplete being just looking for someone else to fill this hole, fill this need in your life. Marriage is actually one broken person getting married, coming together with another broken person. And I don't know if you understand the math there, but 2 broken people coming together does not equal wedded bliss. In fact, it actually ends up meaning a lot more brokenness. heartwarming, right? But what does that mean when it comes to us thinking about how are we to last a lifetime with our romantic relationships? How does it play out? How does it work? How do we do it? Let's go back and look at our bride and our groom, at she and he, and she's speaking here, and see what she says to close us out in our series today. We're in Song of Songs, chapter 8, just 2 verses, 6 and 7. Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. For love is strong as death. Jealousy is fierce as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, he would be utterly despised. Here we go, just 2 verses. And let's start by going back to verse 6. And we see here that she is talking about this idea of a seal. Now, there's been a lot of animals in this book, right? We have goats and ewes and doves and fawns. This is not a seal like a seal you would go to SeaWorld to see. This is something very different. This is a seal. If you look at this in verse 6, she says, set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. When she says these words, she's talking about this thing that was almost like a stamp, right? It was these beautifully made metal pieces that were very intricately designed, very ornate. And these were among people's most treasured possessions, most precious possessions, because this is what they would use, right, to stamp a document, to sign a document. This is what they would use to mark ownership over something. This is what someone would use almost as like their ID. Like if you stole someone's seal, you stole their identity, almost like a driver's license today. And so what we have here is she is saying to set her as a seal upon his heart, right, upon his arm. And so there's a weird kind of thing going on here where she is the seal, but it's upon his heart. So does she own him? Does he own her? What does that look like? What does this possessive thing look like? Because a seal was something you stamped, right? Almost like a ring or a signet to show this is mine, this is my possession. What she's trying to get here, what she's trying to communicate is there is this mutual, lasting possession between the two of them, right? It's not that one owns the other, but it's this idea of I am my beloved's and he is mine, and she belongs to him and he belongs to her. They have pledged themselves to each other. And what does this actually look like, right? She said, pledge me as a seal upon your heart. Set me as a seal upon your heart, right? So it's the internal, right? If we say, you're in my heart, we often say that means that we have emotions for them or a deep affection for them. There's something intrinsic and valuable about this. And she's saying, I want you to have those feelings about me as I have those feelings for you. Put this stamp, put this seal on your heart. We are drawn together in this way. But then she also says not only your heart, but also your arm. In other words, it's not just this internal thing where you say, yeah, I have emotions for you. Yeah, I have feelings for you. It's also this external display, right? Almost think of it like a wedding ring. Today, I wear this ring because this is a mark of a seal that I have with my wife, Jenna, right? And this idea of it's not only this internal thing, it's also external. I want you to show me that you love me. I want others to know that I am yours and that you are mine, that we belong to each other. It's internal, it's external, it's depth, and it's relationship, but it's also this physical outward sign that we will have for each other. It's this very permanent, mutual, lasting affection of ownership for each other. And then the text goes on, and it goes on to describe some of the other ways that this gets lived out, some of the other ways that this happens, right? If you go back to verse 6, we read these words, for love is strong as death. Jealousy is fierce as the grave. Now let's pause right here. This is a unique kind of interesting poetic structure here called synonymous parallelism. It might be a little confusing, but here's what I mean by that. It'll make total sense in just a second. Let's move these lines apart from each other and just see how they go together. Here's what I mean. Love goes with jealousy, right? Love and jealousy are the first half of the line, of both of those lines. And so love goes with jealousy, and not in like jealousy as, we typically think of jealousy like, oh, are you jealous of me? And then I talk to this other person. Not like that, but like in the way that God is a jealous God, that he wants our worship and affection, and it's not to be given away to anyone else. It's the same thing here. The love that they have for each other is one that should only be for each other, not for anyone else. And what this does is this love and this jealousy represents something. It represents a single-minded loyalty. I am yours, you are mine, we are together. Now, in the same way, death and grave go together, and what that represents is just this idea that it is powerful and it is serious. So we have a single-minded loyalty that is powerful and serious. In fact, it is dead serious, right? We say that whenever we're not joking about something. No, I'm serious. I am dead serious about this. I am dead serious about my commitment to you, meaning that our love is so connected and it is so important that it goes to the grave. Now remember, this builds on this idea of having the seal on the heart, the seal on the arm. Then it goes on to talk about love and how serious love is, the single-minded loyalty that is powerful, right? And so what she's saying here and what they're communicating to each other is just this idea is that when you have a relationship with a husband, with a wife, it is a relationship like none other. It is till death do us part. It is someone that you share your joys with. It is someone that you share your struggles with. It is someone that you share your happiness with. It is someone that knows your trials and knows your hardships. No one else knows you like your spouse. No one else should. You can have friends, right? You have family, but there is an intimacy, an internal and external relationship where you are drawn to each other no matter what. The good, the bad, the thick, the thin, the hard, all those different things, the joys. You are stuck. You are staying with each other in a good way. Because this love that you have, it's jealous for other lovers and it's single-minded. And it's so serious, it's so powerful, it's so strong that it's as serious as death. The only thing they could think of to compare love to is death. And that is why this is so strong of an image that ever they draw here, right? And it continues. Not only is it as strong as death, but we also start to read about how it has to do with this flame, with fire, right? Look at verses 6 and 7. Its flashes are flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. Now, its flashes, it being love, it says, are flashes of fire, and it is the very flame of the Lord. A little tidbit here, and I think this is very fascinating. This is the only part in this book where the Lord is named. Not that he's not present in any of it, but there's something interesting here about right here is where it's pulled out, where his name is invoked, where it's pulled out, where it's spoken for the first time. Now, before we get to that, I think this is really interesting that we still use this language to talk about romance and romantic wisdom and romantic love. We use the language of flames, right? You got a new flame? Or we might say things like, oh, our flame is burning bright. Or we might say things like, well, I just feel like we lost our spark. The flames died out. It's barely an ember. It's just barely there. Now, how is that possible in relationships? Well, one, it's the wrong flame, right? We are too busy thinking about compatibility. We are too busy thinking about just our feelings, or we're too busy thinking about, passion and all these things that we think are, if we found the one, right, that all these things will just be on fire all the time. But this is not the flame that is the flame of love, right? It is the very flame of the Lord. And this flame does not go out, right? Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. What typically puts out fire? Water. But this love is so strong that not even a flood can drown it out. Not even a flood can quench it. There are so many other things that we let quench our love, quench our flames when it comes to relationships, right? Well, we just get bored, or they're not exciting anymore, right? All these things because it's the wrong flame that we're thinking about. But if our foundation is built on Christ, the very flame of the Lord, it cannot be extinguished. Doesn't mean it's always easy, but it cannot be extinguished if that is the very flame that we are drawn to when it comes to our romantic relationships. One more little image that they give here, and then we're going to keep unpacking this a little bit. Look at the end of verse 7 in chapter 8. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, he would be utterly despised. In other words, love cannot be bought. Love cannot be sold. Love is not a commercial exchange. Love is not a cost-benefit analysis. Love is not a you get what you pay for type of situation. True love cannot be bought. True love cannot be bargained for. It is worth more than gold. It's worth more than gold. So how does all this tie in to us wondering if we have what it takes to last a lifetime, to go the distance, to live out our vows? How does all this go together? What is she trying to communicate here? What makes it last a lifetime? I'll tell you what she's not saying. What she's not saying is that it's all about the one, this person who's going to complete you, who will always be right, who will always be perfect, who will meet all of your needs. You see, one of the things we know is that feelings may come and go. Compatibility will be challenged. Romance may fade from time to time, and sexual passion will slow down. All of those are pretty much guarantees in some form or fashion. Maybe not all at the same time. Maybe some will fluctuate while others drop, and all over. You can think about that. But here's the thing. Love is not about these things. Love is not just about feelings. Love is not just about compatibility. Love is not just about romance. And love is not just about sexual passion. Yes, those are all a part of it, but it is not just about those things. What is love about? What does love withstand? What can love make its way through? It's almost like the Apostle Paul was onto something whenever he wrote these words in 1 Corinthians 13. These are going to be very familiar to many of us, especially if you've ever been to a wedding, right? Where he writes, love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. How does love never end? How does love endure all things? Well, the way that it does that is it's a commitment. It's a promise. It is a seal that you have placed on each other's hearts and a seal that you have placed on each other's arms where you belong to them and they belong to you. It is a jealous love that demands a single-minded loyalty, but in a mutual affection kind of way. And it is so serious that it is serious, that it goes to the grave. It is also a love that's flame never dies out, not because of just your romance and passion and feelings for each other, but because it is built on the flame of the Lord. And it is a love that is worth more than gold. It's built on those things. It's not built on us finding the one. It's not built on us, right, just hoping to get by. It's built on the truth of who Jesus is. Now, here's some hard truth, but still a truth. No one, I'll say that one more time, no one on this earth will ever love you perfectly in this way. No one will ever fill that void completely. You will never find the one who will do things perfectly for you. But I also say this to you, good. Good. Because if we look to our spouse to be all those things for us, and if we expect ourselves to be all those things for our spouse in our dating, romantic relationships and all those things, you see, that is a false gospel. That is not true. We cannot be those things. In fact, when we realize the shortcomings of ourselves and the shortcomings of our spouse, it should actually draw us back to Jesus. Why? Why should it draw us back to Jesus? Because he is the only one who fills all those needs perfectly. He is the only one who loves perfectly. He is the only one who is the embodiment of everything that we could ever want or need or meet. All of our longings and our desires can only be found in him. And here's the beautiful, beautiful thing about Christ. It's not the love that he has is not just compared to death, right, that we just did. He actually has conquered death. Look at me in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 55 and 57. We read these words, "O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." He has conquered death. Love is not compared to death. He has actually conquered death. He has beat death. And he is the only one who will fulfill all your needs, all your desires fully. And any time that we think that there is someone out there that will complete us, that will be our missing piece, we are sorely mistaken, and we are putting that person in place of Jesus because he is the only one who can do that. It draws us to Christ whenever we realize our own shortcomings and the shortcomings of our husband or our wife or the person that we're dating or the person that we are engaged to. Now, I want to close by reading from a book called The Meaning of Marriage by Tim Keller, and his wife, Kathy Keller. In the book, this is kind of in the beginning, they're kind of introducing this idea of what is the purpose of this book and really what is the meaning of marriage. And what I love here is they talk about how do you last a lifetime? How do you go the distance? What's the mystery of marriage? So kind of like, how do we actually make it that far? Well, it's Jesus, and it's the gospel. So let me read to you. Again, it's a little long like our earlier quote, but I think it's so good. So why don't we close our teaching today, and let's close our series with these words. Here's what Tim says. "The reason that marriage is so painful and yet wonderful is because it is a reflection of the gospel, which is painful and wonderful at once. The gospel is this: we are more sinful and flawed in ourselves than we ever dare believe. Yet at the same time, we are more loved and accepted in Jesus Christ than we ever dared hope. This is the only kind of relationship that will transform us. Love without truth is sentimentality. It supports and affirms us, but keeps us in denial about our flaws. Truth without love is harshness. It gives us information, but in such a way that we cannot really hear it. God's saving love in Christ, however, is marked by both radical truthfulness about who we are and yet also radical, unconditional commitment to us." He continues, "The hard times of marriage drive us to experience more of this transforming love of God. But a good marriage will also be a place where we experience more of this transforming love at a human level. The gospel can fill our hearts with God's love so that you can handle it when your spouse fails to love you as he or she should. That frees us to see our spouse's sins and flaws to the bottom and speak of them, and yet still accept our spouse fully." May we, through our marriages, experience the transforming love of God. May we look to Jesus. May we look to the gospel to be the one who fulfills all of our needs. The good news that none of us deserve love, but we get it because of Jesus. Not because of anything we've done, but because of him. Amen. Let's pray. Lord, thank you just for your word. Thank you that you show us that love is strong and love lasts, but it's only because it's the flame of the Lord. It is the very flame of the Lord. Father, we just want to repent and we just want to turn from any other love that we think, any other flame that we think is going to fulfill our needs that's not you. Lord, draw us to you. Draw us back to who you are so that we can love you better and love you more appropriately, but also love our spouses better so that we can love the world better. Lord, we know that you are the only one that we need that will meet all of our needs. So, Father, draw us to you. Thank you that you have shown us through this book, through the Song of Songs, what good, passionate, married love looks like, but also the love and passion that you have for us, that you do not leave us or forsake us, and you draw us back to you. Father, help us to be obedient in the way that we love you and the way that we love the world around us. Amen.
Thanks for checking out our online teaching. If you enjoyed this content and would like some more information about us, head over to our website at www.willowdalechapel.org or download our app. There you can stay up to date on any events, ministries, and other opportunities we have coming up at Willowdale Chapel.